Hello everybody and welcome back to Debate Hub. I have a whole spiel. I am Chesh, your master debater. Welcome. I've got Dapper with me and I've got Borg with me and I'm excited to have them both. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves as part of their opening, as per usual. The topic is whether or not the Maquis were in Star Trek were the good guys or the bad guys, both of them taking a respective position. The format today is 10-10-10, so they're going to get 10 minutes each for their opening, they're going to get 10 minutes each for their rebuttal, and they'll get 10 minutes back and forth where they get to either do another rebuttal or ask each other questions, depending on how they're feeling about the debate so far. After that, there will be a brief intermission, and then we'll move into the Q&A portion. I will be collecting questions from the chat as we go, but please make sure you tag at Debate Hub Official to make sure I don't miss anything. If you really want to make sure your question gets through, you can super chat it. That way I'll get it for sure. It'll ensure that, but it'll also grant you a priority during the Q&A. So that way, if you really don't want it missed, it'll get through. You will notice that there's a poll for the debate question. It goes up about roughly 30 minutes before we start, so you can vote on where your position is at the beginning of the debate. After their opening arguments, I will take that down, and then at the intermission, I will put up another one, which will then allow you guys to vote again. And then we'll just talk about the results if they matter. I will post them also on social media. The community tab as well, so make sure you go and check that out. If you are watching this in the future, you might notice that the Q&A portion is missing, and that is because that gets taken out and edited out, and then later uploaded for members and Patreons, which are linked in the description down below, and that is the end of my opening spiel. How are both of you today? Are you guys ready?
Ready as I will be.
Yeah, I'm not going to get more ready.
Awesome sauce. So we rolled some. Well, Dapper rolled a dice before.
Yeah, I did.
To decide who was going to go first, and Dapper rolled evens and got himself. So Dapper's going to start. I'm going to put 10 minutes on the clock, and we'll just get right into this because why not? Everybody seems super duper ready to go, which is nice. I like that. I like that everybody's prepared. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, go!
All right, I'm Dapper Dinosaur of the channel Dapper Dinosaur. You can find me over at Dapper Dinosaur. I'm the one that's brown and does a lot of anti-creationism stuff, and not the one who's green and does the coding tutorials. That's a different Dapper Dinosaur. Still a cool guy, though, as far as I know. All right, so the Maquis. First, we have to understand who are the Maquis, because just saying, oh, the Maquis, they're the mostly human insurgency group from Deep Space Nine that has roots in Star Trek Next Generation doesn't help a whole lot. So we need to understand that there was a border dispute between the Cardassian Union and the Federation. The Federation was setting up colonies on previously uninhabited but inhabited worlds near the Cardassian Union and its claimed space. And so they thought that this was a threat to their territory. Now, I'm not going to assess whether or not that's true. I think there probably is a reasonable case to say that that was something that was a threat to the Cardassian Union. But regardless of that fact, we have a lot of people, primarily humans, especially also humans from populations that have a history of having had other populations of humans commit genocide or ethnic cleansing against them, settling in places that would become at issue in the Cardassian border wars. Then, after these Cardassian border wars, in which these people, who, let's remember, settled on unoccupied, unclaimed territories, these were not displacing other people. They did not harm any Cardassians in doing this. Were attacked by the Cardassians, attempted to be ethnically cleansed by the Cardassians through military force, and to some extent, given that the Cardassians have a habit of attacking civilian infrastructures, we can make I think, a reasonable claim that the Cardassians were attempting to commit genocide against these colonists. Over the course of this war, it eventually reached a stalemate, and the Federation signed a treaty with the Cardassians that assigned new borders. And then the Federation agreed to ethnically cleanse Cardassian space of the colonists who had done nothing wrong and who had already been attempted to be either genocided or ethnically cleansed by the Cardassians in the first place. So basically, the Federation just said, yeah, sure, ethnic cleansing sounds great. And you can see an example of this in an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where a group of Native Americans who had settled on a planet that they held sacred were being forced to move by the crew of the The Enterprise crew engages in ethnic cleansing in that episode. They're not the good guys. So after this, the Cardassians then start setting up settlements on planets that were already occupied by former Federation citizens. This is after the Federation and the Cardassians both agree that these populations that refuse to be ethnically cleansed would be allowed to continue on and not be ethnically cleansed. And yet, what did we see? Well, basically Israeli-style settlements taking over area that had already been claimed by populations who were there already and using that area. And then on top of that, their replicators were sabotaged so that they produced poisoned food. And I want to point out that one aspect of the definition of genocide under the United Nations definition, with the group that coined the term and established what it means, point 3 is deliberately inflicting on a group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. And I think it is unarguable that poisoning the food and water supply of a population is an attempt at genocide. So the Maquis resistance started up in order to both resist this and fight back. Now, I am not going to sit here and tell you that everything the Maquis did was appropriate, because that's not how resistance movements work. They don't always do the right thing at every moment. And in some cases, that's because you have to do something or you're all going to die. And so I am not going to sit here and tell you that their use of industrial replicators to create a bioweapon to target Cardassians was okay. It wasn't okay. I don't think that's the right response. However, we have to remember, this is a group who had their livelihood sold out by the government that had promised them that they could do things like settle, have the protection of the Federation, have self-determination. Then the Federation attempted to ethnically cleanse them. And when they resisted that, which again, the Federation had no right to do, they didn't get asked for their consent to do that. They were then handed over to a fascist military junta who then attempted ethnic cleansing and genocide against them. And now that they are like, you know what? No, we're not going to accept ethnic cleansing and genocide, actually. We're going to fight back to protect the homes and the societies that we built from the ground up, again, on previously unclaimed worlds that had no previous sapient populations. They are now labeled as terrorists. Now, you can make the argument that defecting to the Maquis as a Federation officer, which happened many times in Starfleet history, isn't okay because now you're violating whatever oaths you took to Starfleet and the Federation. And maybe that's true. Maybe they're a bunch of traitors, those particular members of Starfleet who defected, but that's still the minority of the Maquis. And in fact, they primarily maintain leadership positions because they had the military training, even though Starfleet's not a military. Now, we have to understand that any resistance movement is likely to engage in behaviors that cause harm to innocents, and that's, one, not an okay thing for them to do, but two, does not make their cause the bad cause. It doesn't make them the bad guys overall. One thing I'd like to point out is that in, say, World War II, it's pretty obvious to just about everyone that the Allies were overall the good guys and the Axis were overall the bad guys. But the Allies still bombed civilian populations, had ethnically based internment camps, had human rights violation in POW camps. None of that's in dispute. The Allies did unforgivable, awful atrocities. That doesn't make them the bad guys of World War II. Because we have to look at, on the whole, who is in the right in terms of the casus belli, and also who is going to cause more damage in the prosecution of this conflict, as well as who will cause more damage if the conflict is resolved in their favor. And I would argue that in all of these cases, we give advantage to the Maquis. The casus belli was that they were trying to defend themselves from ethnic cleansing and genocide. They're on the right. Obviously, if the Cardassians win this conflict, it's going to result in the ethnic cleansing and or genocide of these people. Whereas if they win, Cardassia maintains status quo antebellum. So no particular harm past what they lost in prosecuting the war, which is a war of their choice. Now, when it comes to tactics, it is true that they did use biological weapons against Cardassian populations that included civilian populations. However, that was preceded by a widespread systematic attempt to kill or drive them all out by the Cardassians at a scale larger than the scale that the Maquis were engaged in, which means that I would argue that even in the course of the prosecution of the war, that, and I'm just going to call it a war, even though it was an insurgency, whatever, who cares, that still the Maquis come out more favorable than the Cardassians. Now, if we want to argue that the Federation was actually the good guys in this, one thing they could have done is simply stayed out of it. It is true that these people were former Federation civilians, but when they stayed on, they were informed, and all three sides agreed that they were, in fact, in Cardassian territory, and that the Federation was not able to come to their aid. So there is that. Also, let's not forget that more than once, the Cardassians were caught shipping weapons against the treaty into the demilitarized zone in order to arm Cardassian settlers who were settling worlds that had been promised to be left alone, and that the Federation response to this was to basically write a sternly worded letter to the Cardassian Union, which in no way helps. This got to the point that the Federation officer in charge of the treatment of former Federation citizens within the demilitarized zone, as well as any Federation installations there, got so fed up by the Federation doing nothing that he defected to the Maquis and became the overall leader of the movement as a whole. Because the Federation's response to this was to, one, do nothing to prevent the Cardassians from violating the treaty, and two, to prosecute people who were trying to protect their homes when they found out that they were doing that and had them in their custody. Now, if they want to prosecute, former Starfleet members for their crimes that they committed while in the Federation, sure, whatever. But I would argue that they have absolutely no authority over the civilians that they abandoned and who then took up arms to defend themselves from an ongoing campaign of genocide. Because let's also remember, there was no campaign of genocide against the Cardassians as a whole by the Maquis. The Maquis were not interested in wiping out Cardassia Prime. They weren't going to go invade and take over all Cardassian colonies. They were trying to prevent the Cardassians from killing off every last non-Cardassian within their borders after they had been promised that that wouldn't happen by both the Federation and the Cardassians. Calling them the bad guys is basically to say that if you violently resist your own genocide, you're the bad guy. I don't know how it's possible to come to another conclusion that does not then say that modern groups who have or are facing a genocide are the bad guys, like the Armenians, the Jews, the Palestinians today. So if you want to lump them in, because sometimes in their resistance, they've gone overboard, which is true. I mean, you can do that, but then you're consistently siding with the side of genocide, which is not a side I think you want to sit on, which is an emotional appeal, I'll grant you. But I'm also out of time, so that's where I'll leave it.
Good job. Thank you very much. Everybody clap. This is a supportive place of non-toxic bullshit, so if we could clapping emojis for our participants, clapping emojis in the chat. Thank you very much, Dapper. Well done. I appreciate that. Borg, are you ready?
I'm not going to be ready in the next next 5 minutes, so...
Valid. All right, let's get you up there. Let's get you 10 minutes on the clock. And 3, 2, 1, go for it.
All right. The DMZ was established by the Federation Cardassian Treaty, but mostly dealt with the border between the two. The withdrawn border, which was in the center of the DMZ, had several colonies on both sides of them. Some of which Federation colonies went up on the Cardassian side, some of the Federation colonies, and vice versa. Even though the colonies were on the wrong side, they were offered resettlement by the Federation. Many of them refused to on the grounds that they had been living there for decades, and thought that the fact that they were now on a different side of the border without their permission was a slight. Over the years, several of the colonies were forcibly relocated by the Federation, particularly Joroa and Slava II were forcibly relocated to force. But I will not argue that the Cardassians were attacking the Federation colonies and trying to wipe them out. But they were given the option to relocate. Had they asked, the Federation would have gladly stepped in and helped them move out. They had evidence that the Cardassians were attacking the colonies and smuggling the weapons in. The Federation would gladly stepped in and helped. But instead, they took it into their own hands and started attacking Cardassians. Our position is that, well, they had other options than going straight up to fighting. They could have asked for help, pointed it out, and if it came to it, even just left. There are plenty of other worlds out there for them to move to. And yes, I know it's sad, but sometimes life sucks. And resorting to violence when you have other options isn't right. That was a lot shorter than I thought it would be, but all right. Sorry. I think I'm going to call it there because the rest of it I had doesn't apply to him anymore. Sorry, Dapper. You took a lot of wind out of that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. So wait, does that mean you're just done?
Yes, unfortunately, you took a lot of stuff out of my stuff. I'm sorry.
You can still make your argument regardless.
Yeah, well, I just think the Federation, the Maquis had other options to do. Besides resorting to defend them, they could have moved, asked for help. The Federation would have offered it. If they asked, but instead, they resorted to violence. Not saying it's wrong, but there were other options first. Again, Deborah, you took a lot of wind out of my stuff that I had on this thing, so it's going to point out the whole use of biogenic weapons as part of the whole thing.
I mean, yeah, still bring that up. It's still just your argument. You can get to the going back and forth after you get through it.
Okay, well, all right, fine. Some of the Maquis resort to use of biogenic weapons to clear worlds of Cardassians, make it able to resettle later by humans. So, yeah, but Dapper's already said he doesn't mind that, so I'm just going to try to bring it up. Call him quits there. Light just went out. Just kill the timer.
All right, yeah, no worries. Thank you very much, Borg, for getting. Yeah, unfortunately, it sounds like Dapper undercut what a lot of your argument was before you got to make it. Is that what it sounds like?
Yeah.
Generally,
well, I guess. Oh, sorry.
In just as a general form of practice, this is Borg's first debate, so we don't want to. It takes practice. Generally, though, if somebody does make an argument against your argument, whether it's good or not, you generally still want to make your argument, because otherwise people can't make a decision.
Okay.
So, for example, right, I'm just gonna help out a little bit as the moderator, which I'm not supposed to do, but I'll just help out a little bit. Just because
Hashtag Chess is a bad moderator.
I know, right? Just because Dapper said that he thinks that the Maquis maybe went too far sometimes by, for example, using those weapons, doesn't mean that the audience is going to know how aggressive some of those things were, right? So you can point out and say, well, yeah, it's great that they needed to defend themselves, but they didn't need to do this, this, or this, or this, or this, or this is unacceptable regardless, right? So you can still make the argument without it. But what it sounds like is Dapper convinced you.
Well, yeah, but so, like, again, I've kind of heard now, it's like, yeah, some of the renegades, like Michael Eddington, they're renegades. And blaming the entire Maquis because of one or two guys.
Well, if we want, I do have a rebuttal for the points that were marked down.
Yeah,
because I did jot them down. So let me know when you're ready for me to go there.
I'm ready. I think we're ready.
Go for it. I'll reset the timer.
Okay. I'll wait till you do. I don't want to cheat.
Go for it.
All right. So the first point that Borg has made is that there were colonies on both sides, and there were indeed civilian populations of Cardassians that ended up in the Federation who were offered resettlement. Now, we don't actually know, as far as I can tell, whether or not all of them accepted the offer of resettlement or some of them stayed in the Federation. But there's one thing I can be pretty well assured of, which is that any Cardassians that remained in the Federation did not have their replicators poisoned and a bunch of Federation civilians sent in to settle their land and push them off of it. And they weren't subject to genocidal conditions, as far as we can tell. Now, if that did happen, it certainly wasn't in the show that I remember or that I've been able to find on looking back at this. So it does not seem like that we have parity on both sides there. It is true that the Federation civilians were offered resettlement, but that is the offer of assisting the Cardassians in the ethnic cleansing of these civilians who had no say in the shifting of the border. I'm sorry, but if someone comes up to you at your house that you built with your own hands in the city that you helped your neighbors build and says, I'm sorry, this is our land now, you should probably leave, we would not generally find that okay. In fact, in history, it's currently happening right now with Palestinians, and I would argue that it's not okay. If, for example, the would-be King Trump were to actually make good on his threat to, say, annex Greenland, and then he were to ship in a bunch of American citizens and tell all the current Greenlanders that they are now required to leave and that they will be resettled in appropriate areas, like, say, I don't know, around Hudson Bay or something, because it has a somewhat similar climate. Oh, he's not asking permission for this. He's just doing it, right?
I know you're reacting to my face. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I think that everyone, the Canadians, the Greenlanders, and the United States should be against this, right? I think everyone would agree. This is not okay. You can't just show up and tell people they have to leave. And if your claim is, yeah, but your government said it's okay, like the Kingdom of Denmark was like, yeah, sure, America, you can have Greenland. I don't think that the people in Greenland would thereby become in the wrong for saying, I don't care what the King of Denmark or the Prime Minister said. We're not leaving. And that if you tried to force them out, they would be okay in engaging in guerrilla warfare against the people trying to occupy the area. So that they had other options does not really negate the fact that they had every right to remain in their homes that they had established under not hurting anyone in doing so, right? So it is also the case that some of them did take them up on that. And I mean, if you are okay with moving, then okay, fine. But the argument that because they were offered an option and some of them took it up, but some refused, that's just a pro-ethnic cleansing option. That's just saying if the ethnic cleansing is nice enough, then it's not a problem. But it's always a problem. It's never okay to say, hey, the fact that there are ethnic minorities in our territory and that we don't like them is justification to displace them is never okay. It's never a good option. Also, Borg Emporia did bring up that at least 2 planets were forcibly resettled by the Federation. I mean, that's just the Trail of Tears, right? The Trail of Tears was a bad thing. It's not a good thing. So that's the Federation doing an ethnic cleansing on behalf of, again, a fascist military junta. The fact that they might have been settled in pretty nice places does not fix the fact that that's the Federation assisting a fascist military junta in ethnic cleansing. That's not okay. Fundamentally, the Maquis are correct that the Federation had absolutely no right to hand over their planets to the Cardassian Union. The Cardassian Union didn't settle those planets. They didn't colonize those planets. They hadn't even set up military checkpoints on some kind of strategic occupation for strategic reasons. The Cardassian Union just got nervous about Federation colonies near their space. A more reasonable response to that might have been an attempt to prevent further settlement by establishing a military presence in places that they were not comfortable with, Federation citizens settling. That's an option. Or at least declaring territorial claims on those planets and perhaps giving notice of plans to colonize them. That would at least mean that when Federation citizens say, hey, I want to go settle whatever the heck planet that the Cardassians already have a settlement on, the Federation can say, hey, if you do that and the Cardassians come because they've already claimed it, we can't do anything. We can't help you. And then at that point, when the Cardassians come, well, I mean, they went in there knowing that was going to happen and it's not going to be as bad and it's not going to come back on the Federation. And the Cardassians already said, hey, do not settle here. But that's not the situation at any point. At no point did anyone who settled in what became the demilitarized zone from the Federation side do anything by settling there that was wrong. However, in being ethnically cleansed at best and threatened with genocide at worst, they're not the bad guys in this situation. Like I said, they've definitely done things that I'm not okay with. But calling them bad guys just seems crazy to me, and I will stop my rebuttal there because I think that covers everything that I heard from Borg.
Yeah, and the nice thing about these is that we can, you don't have to use up the whole timer. That's just like a maximum, not a minimum. So don't feel bad if you don't use up the whole time.
I like that
Borg,
you added an everyone sucks to the current poll.
I did. I should have had an everyone sucks in it initially, and I didn't, and I thought about it after, and I almost redid the poll, but I was like, it's too late. I'll fix it for the second one. For the first one, the majority were unsure. So I don't know if that has to do with, like, a lack of knowledge of the situation that we're discussing today, or if that was from, like, just people not knowing how they're feeling about it.
I mean, I think the Maquis are depicted in the show as being somewhat morally ambiguous.
Sure, yeah.
And so I think even if you're familiar with the show, if you take the show as it's presented at face value, I think coming away with a mixed opinion on the Maquis is what the show intends for you to do. Yeah. So I'm definitely bucking the intention of the writers. I'm saying, writers, you intended for me to take it this way, but when I actually look at it, that's not what I see.
Death of the author, quote unquote.
Think of which Maquis you have. Like, you have to prove the Voyager were Maquis, and they turned out all relatively great people, so depends on which Maquis.
Except for Seska.
Yeah.
Seska doesn't count.
My unfinished stock for 2 said, "Don't ethnically cleanse, like and share instead." Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, that's a much better option.
We're very anti-genocide here. Borg, do you have a rebuttal that you want to do?
Well, I actually agree with most of your points, Trevor. Just a couple of bad apples of the things I had problems with in the Maquis, really. So,
well, just because he said they were just bad apples doesn't mean they are.
Yeah, again, and I think Michael Edkin made up a story of missiles going to Cardassia just to save some people who got stuck on the planet. I think so. Might have been portrayed bad, but he died protecting people. I think. So,
well,
not all bad.
Sure.
I mean, it's certainly.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, do you want to do a rebuttal, or should we jump into a back and forth because it's not clear what we should do there?
Yeah.
Back and forth. Let's do.
All right. So I think this means before we go in, Borg, are you conceding the debate itself?
Mine's mostly changed, but yeah, like my things are bad at what people did individually, mostly, which set it up. So. The whole Maquis are probably good, but
sure.
Well, yeah, it's very obvious that there are definitely things that people in the Maquis did, or that were approved of by the Maquis as at an organizational level that were clearly not okay, right? So I would never make the claim that there is absolutely no moral grayness or even darkness in the Maquis. It's clear that they do things that aren't okay, right? And to some extent, we can say that the people who approved that were probably bad guys. But one of the things is that bad guys can exist in systems that are still fighting for the correct cause and are overall the good guys at a, like international politics level, which is basically the level that we're operating at here, right? Like, I think we could make an argument that within the modern period, the war that we can probably have the most claim to having been a just war under like just war theory that we get from like primarily Catholic theologians, but it's been largely adopted by a large section of the international community as a reasonable way to assess wars. And I would say that the argument, the conflict in the modern period that we can make the best argument for having been a just war is probably World War II, right? It was waged in part to prevent considerable harm. It almost certainly was less harmful to wage it than to not. Although we then have to acknowledge that neither side conducted themselves according to the principles of just war. And so while the war may have in its goals been just from the side of the Allies, it was not just in its prosecution by the Allies in all cases. And that's basically just my argument for the Maquis, right? The Maquis had a just casus belli. Their goal was essentially a return to at least the Cardassian Union as it was antebellum. And their manner of engaging in war was primarily fine, right? Like mostly what they did was they attacked Cardassian military outposts. They attacked cargo ships running weapons to, Cardassian insurgency operations operating on their worlds. Sometimes they even directly attacked Cardassian military like vessels and like warships. All of those are reasonable things to do under a just cause war sort of framework, which is pretty much the framework that I go for when is it okay to do a war and how should you conduct yourself during that war. And so I guess my question is, to what extent do you think that, because it seems like you agree with me that they have a just casus belli, So to what degree do you think that waging the war in an unethical manner can take you from being the good guys with the just casus belli to being the bad guys regardless of your casus belli?
When you straight up start killing everyone, start committing ethnic, like literally straight up genocide, then you turn to a bad thing. But like the Crusades, I think, will be an example. I think my history's right. Basically, going to war against Muslims, like yeah.
Well, I'm certainly not arguing that the Crusades had a just casus belli.
Well, I'm using it as an example. Like, we're in the name of God, and then you just go slaughter people. It's an example for me. Like, yeah.
Right, but my question is, if we assume a just casus belli, where is the line where you go from being the good side that might not always be acting in accordance with just war principles while fighting, to having ignored those principles so much that you can no longer really be said to be the good guys regardless of your casus belli? Because it seems like you started out with the opinion that the casus belli for the Maquis was reasonable, right? That, or wasn't completely unreasonable, right? You did say that they maybe should have taken the offer to be ethnically cleansed. I suppose we could argue about that, but like, it does seem like you start off with the idea that it's at least possible. And I agree that in principle, it is possible to go from being the good guys in a war because of a just casus belli to becoming the bad guys because your method of prosecution exceeds the evil that you are trying to prevent with the war. And so I would say that if the Maquis had made attempts to commit genocide against the Cardassians as a whole, if they had launched biological weapons at major population centers that were larger than, causing more damage than what the Cardassians were even threatening, then they would definitely go to being the bad guys. They didn't do that, though, and so I would compare their use of the biological weapons to the United States' use, unacceptable and unforgivable use of nuclear weapons against civilian population centers. Despite that, I still think that the Allies were overall the good guys in World War II. So, like, is there a line for you? And where do you think that is? Because for me, if, say, the United States had nuclear bombed a few more places, they might have become the bad guys.
Yeah, but I always point out with that case, there were like millions of people dying over in China at the same time. So save more lives by doing the bombs. Eventually, yes, I would say, if you bomb literally all of Japan, yes, that line would have been crossed. But you have to consider all the facts that people in China are dying from the Japanese invasion. So,
well, by the time of the bombs being dropped, the Chinese invasion of Japan had already been pushed back. The reason that it was given is that Japan had largely repeated. Well, the starvation was a result of those invasions, but that was not going to be ameliorated by the bombings because that was a problem that was now existing in China simply as a result of the invasion that had already occurred. And that situation was going to persist regardless of whether Japan was blockaded, whether it was invaded, whether it was bombed, or whether it surrendered. And in fact, the bombings didn't fix the starvation problems in China. They persisted through that because the problem was not the active occupation by by Japan anymore. But so I think we both seem to agree, though, that if the amount of harm that is going to be caused by the side with the just casus belli is going to exceed, or is starting to exceed, the likely harm from not going to war, that they have become the bad guys in that situation, that in trying to be the good guys, you've gone too far. And I think that that's a reasonable position. I'm not convinced that the Maquis did that because, again, while they did create that biological weapon, it did kill a lot of Cardassian civilians. I don't think that it went to the point that in prosecuting their war, they were likely to cause more evil than was caused by the Cardassians in their prosecution of the genocide, which is not a justification for having done so. It's just a justification for saying, I still think they're the good guys.
Yeah.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second?
Oh, Chesh coming in here.
I am.
Pro-Cardassian Chesh.
Ain't I a stinker? How do you measure reliably whether or not the amount you're doing is good or bad? Right? So if you want to say, for example, like, I know you know what I'm saying, but just for clarity, in World War II, if we're like, okay, well, we know Japan is going to be a problem and is going to be an excess of a problem if we don't drop the sun on them. So we're going to drop the sun on them. Like, how do you know for sure that would, like, especially at the time you're making the decision? So
generally in a just war framework, if I am accurately portraying it, which it's been a little while since I did a deep dive into just war theory, but it's the framework I'm using here. So generally, one thing is you largely discount just the bare deaths of military members because that is the whole thing of war. You've already decided that, those are people who are likely to die or become seriously injured. But what you can do is do things like assess what side is going to cause more unnecessary casualties among civilians or more unnecessary suffering overall. So, for instance, releasing things like mustard gas has largely been considered to be an unjust tactic because it causes unnecessary suffering. That's also why there's a bunch of weapons that are banned by the Geneva Convention that, the United States military uses anyway. So,
as a Canadian, I wouldn't know anything about that.
Yeah, well, we'll just ignore that stuff. But so it's never going to be a perfect science, right? Because you can't predict the future. You don't have a crystal ball. Even if you do, it doesn't work. I promise. And so what you have to do is you have to come up with reasonable estimates as to like, okay, so if this particular country that we think should be fought in a war keeps on doing whatever it is that we think we should fight them about, who's going to be hurt? How many people are going to be hurt? How much suffering is going to happen? And then you compare it to the suffering and casualties that are likely from a war to stop them from doing that thing. Now, if your cause of war is just you want land and territory and to get rid of people you don't like, that's never going to be a just cause anyway. So you're out of the running for being a good guy. But if your cause is we want to prevent a genocide or an ethnic cleansing or the invasion of the sovereign territory that has not done anything aggressive to warrant an invasion, or we want to stop the annexation of a region by a power which the people of that region object to, things like that. Those can all be reasonable, just causes for war. And so then you try to figure out as closely as possible what's more likely to cause more suffering and casualties, the war or not the war. And if it's not the war, then you don't conduct the war. But I would argue that if you are on the side that is currently suffering genocide and ethnic cleansing, there is really no option for no war. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. The pro, yes, we should resist this violently to the point of war is pretty much always going to be the just side, because the no war option is just that you get genocided, and the yes war option is that not only do you maybe not get genocided, but also since your plan isn't to genocide the other side, the genocide just kind of stops if you win. And so I would argue that basically if you are a side that is currently facing ethnic cleansing or genocide, it's basically always going to be the case that you're the good guys, at least at first. Now, if you conduct yourself in a way that overrides that, then that might happen.
Make yourself the problem. I've been following a situation where there's a group of people harassing an individual. That individual has gone through court to try to get them to not harass her anymore. And in return, they have tried to file against her, saying she's actually the one harassing them. And the argument, one of the main arguments that I've heard about this is the individual is saying, if I stop, there's nothing for me to stop doing. If I agree to all of your terms to not contact you, to not do this, to not do that, to not do this, nothing changes because I'm already not doing these things. So right. I can agree to this, but in return, so if you're looking at a situation like what we're talking about with the Maquis, you're in a situation where if one side agrees to not do something, they're already not, like, stop invading our territory. Great, we weren't in, so, right. Okay. Like, if the Maquis stop doing everything they're doing, does everything change or does nothing change? And I would say, argue even at this point, the same thing if we want to talk about, more complicated Palestine and Israel, because I've seen that come up in the chat a little bit, and maybe we'll have a bigger discussion about that another day, which I think should be a discussion, by the way, not a debate, because that's like that's not really debate territory. Yeah. We're trying to be a little bit picky here about what
genocide is bad, doesn't need to be debated.
Yeah, that's not a debate. So there's I don't know. That's just my take. Borg, go for it.
That would be an interesting topic to discuss Palestine and the whole thing. I think we should look into that. I wanted to look into that for a while now. Just give me an idea to do that.
Hey, go for it. It's not an easy thing. When I say not easy, I mean it's not that it's hard to find sources. It's that it is not psychologically easy to go into that because it gets real dark. So, like, you might want to be prepared for that because you probably will be upset. When you're looking into that. But yeah, I do think that there are a lot of parallels between
Not for the faint of heart.
the Cardassians being Israelis versus the Maquis being Palestinians. Now, obviously, it's not a perfect situation, right? Like, this is not a situation where the Palestinians settled unsettled territory and then the Israelis just popped in and were like, actually, we want this. So it is far more complicated than that. But at the basic level of who's doing the genocide and who's resisting the genocide, the answer is the Cardassians are doing the genocide. The Maquis are resisting the genocide. And I'm also lumping in ethnic cleansing, which isn't technically the same thing as genocide, but I'm lumping it in there because they're adjacent. In fact, they often can overlap because sometimes the conditions of the ethnic cleansing become so harsh that it turns into a genocide, which is what happened with the Armenian genocide, which started as an ethnic cleansing. But because the ethnic cleansing was conducted by means of basically death marches, that's a genocide at that point. So, yeah. And also the claim that, well, you could just be relocated sounds a whole lot like people who say, well, why don't the Palestinians just move to Egypt or Jordan? Like, well, in some cases they can't, but even if they can, that's just saying, well, why don't they get ethnically cleansed?
You're also trusting, in that case, you have to trust the people that are attacking you to relocate you safely and reliably, and why would you agree to that?
Well, to be fair, the Federation was allowed to evacuate those people, so you could probably trust that the Federation wasn't going to kill all of you as they're relocating you.
Yeah.
So I do think, and I'm sorry, Borg, I know you were about to say something.
And assuming the bad guys don't keep coming after you after the fact, like, what's going to stop them from attacking you after that?
But I think even if we make the assumption that everyone who is removed in the operation of the ethnic cleansing of what is now Cardassian space per the treaty, even if we say that that is completely 100% safe and reliable, and that there will be no retaliation from any Cardassian agents or Cardassians themselves or anything else like that, that it's still not okay, presumptively, to ethnically cleanse a population. Like that's just still not okay. So, like, even if the Armenian genocide had been the Armenian ethnic cleansing and they were given like luxury train rides out of Turkey, that still wouldn't be okay. It would be better. It would be less bad, but not okay. It's still bad. I would say that we can have a pretty strong presumption, to put it mildly, that ethnic cleansing is bad, you guys. I mean, if the Maquis had been like some species that obligatorily fed on like baby Cardassians, and they were like just inimical to the existence of Cardassians, and you wanted to ethnically cleanse them in that case, like if you were like, oh, Dapper,
You're like, well, if they were tribbles, then maybe it would be valid.
Well, yeah, right. Like, you could make that argument, but like they weren't. It'd be kind of like, hey, would it be okay to like ethnically cleanse zombies in the zombie apocalypse? Like, sure, I guess so.
Yeah, I feel like you have to start asking the question is, do the zombies have culture? And I think that might depend on the zombie groups you're talking about.
If we do with the Romero zombie verse in his later films, they do actually seem to develop a bit of a culture, but they're still trying to eat everybody. So like,
I think you would have a better comparison being like, is it okay to genocide vampires?
And I would say that generally, in most settings, the answer is yes. Maybe not in like True Blood, where they have a non-violent option for consuming blood. So you can make the argument that no. Also, hey, American vampire media, stop making your sexy vampires Confederates.
You can do us a favor, cut that out. Thanks.
It happens a disturbing amount of the time. It's like, oh, I was a Confederate soldier. Like, why?
It is so much of the time. I don't know if the people watching this understand. It is so much of the time. Cut that shit out.
Make a Union soldier vampire. Jeez.
Oh my god. Oh no. New debate.
Yeah. Why are so many American vampires Confederates?
We gotta get JL on here. JL will have some answers. If you guys haven't checked out Bridge the Divide, you should go check out the YouTube channel Bridge the Divide. Oh my goodness.
There is something I want to say. Right now I'm looking at the poll and it looks like it says where the Maquis, the bad guys, but I'm going to say it's supposed to say were.
Oh, my bad.
But it's basically tied between no and everyone sucks. And I want to point out that I do think that to a large degree it is the case that everyone sucks, right? Because I mean, let's be fair. Deploying a bioweapon against Cardassian civilian populations, even if they're settler populations, isn't okay, right? Like, that's not a good thing to do. I'm just saying that in the three sides that we have here, I think the side that clearly has the best case to make for being the good guy side, it's the Maquis. They were right that the Cardassians were violating the treaty. They were right that the Federation didn't do a damn thing about it. They were right that they were being threatened with genocide and ethnic cleansing by both the Federation and the Cardassians, if you count the ethnic cleansing from the Federation. And it's also the case that they did absolutely nothing wrong in settling where they settled, because it was in fact uninhabited land or planets. You know, there were no civilizations, there were no sapiens there that we know of. And if you want to say there were, well, that's going to be your fanfic. But at least in Alpha Canon, we don't have any cases where that's the case.
I think I can help Borg's position out a little bit here. If you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Just because something is wrong doesn't mean, or like, so we can, if we all agree that the Maquis poisoning a bunch of civilians is a wrong thing to do, like you shouldn't do that. The question I think Borg can posit is, were they justified in doing so? Right?
No, I don't think so.
Because you can do something wrong and still have it be justified either externally or internally or retroactively.
Yeah. I would say no, but I would also say that the Allies were not justified in the firebombing of Dresden or in the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They still did it. They were still not the bad guys in that war. They were overall the good guys, but they weren't all individually good guys, and not all of the things they did were okay. Similarly, basically every side in every belligerent in World War II did some kind of inappropriate like detention camps. Pretty much everyone did that. It's not okay. Obviously, the one on the Ally side that I'm most familiar with, living and having grown up in the United States, is Japanese internment, which famously Star Trek actor George Takei had to deal with as a child. That's not okay. There was absolutely no way to justify that, or at least no reasonable way to justify it. Obviously, it was justified to the people who did it. They came up with justifications for themselves, but those were not sufficient. And so, yeah, I would say that no, it's obviously not justified to, use biological weapons against civilian population centers, even if they are settlements that are illegally settling your territory. Because, like, at the very basic level, those kids didn't do that, right? Their parents did, and maybe you have an argument there, but, like, it's also not obviously the case that all the parents had that option, because it's not like it would be above the Cardassian Union to take some of their civilians and order them to move to a settlement. I think the only real wrinkle that you could say is that given the extremely high level of military participation in what would otherwise be the Cardassian civilian population, and the fact that the settlers were actively sabotaging the Federation colonists, or the formerly Federation colonists, that calling at least the adults in the settlements civilians is a little arguable. They're sort of in a gray area between sort of like a paramilitary organization and civilians. So you could make the argument that to a large extent, a large portion of the adult population of those settlements were valid military targets because of their sort of paramilitary nature. But certainly you can't make that argument for the children.
So not.
What do you think, Borg?
Let's hope you can't make the argument for the kids.
Well,
I mean, I wouldn't try. I'm sure someone could try if they wanted to. It's not going to be me.
I could. I'm not going to.
Chesh, weren't you in favor of eating 6-year-olds or something? Wasn't that a thing?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Listen. If you're in a survival situation and you've got children with you, probably the children should be the first ones to go.
Ah, there we go. Gotta eat the children first.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so
historically... They take up the most energy, they got the tenderest meat, they're the easiest to knock out, less work. I'm just saying. You can make more.
I am not going to agree with the principle here. However, what I will say is that historically, in starvation situations where people resort to cannibalism, it is not uncommon for the children to be cannibalized first.
All right, listen. Hold on. Just, you know what? Hold on 1 second. Just one moment. All right. Just. We're gonna get into this. so much for joining us. I just wanted to come in before we start back in, and I just wanted to say thank you so much. You will notice if you're watching this live in the future, and it is no longer live, that the Q&A portion will be missing for you. That is because the Q&A portion of these videos get cut out and then made into their own videos that are available for members. So if you want to become a member, it's like $1. Do it. Do it. Do it for me. Do it for you. You deserve it. All right, we're jumping the shark. So we're gonna switch over here real quick. we're jumping the shark. In war, it's hard to, when it's actively going on. It's you can't use the same argumentation and justification you can retroactively sometimes. Now that's not everything, obviously. It's also like a matter of, if you want to take Palestine, for example, what else are you supposed to do? Die? Like, what? That's the option you're given. You and your family starve and die, or you bomb a school. What are your options? Do you have another option? Is bombing the school? And retroactively, yeah, that's going to sound really bad.
I don't think that's the only option, but, you know.
Right, but if your only option and the only way you have access to fight back is to terrorize the people doing something to you, it's not an invalid thought process.
No, and that's a reason why it happens repeatedly in situations in which one group is being pushed out or having genocide committed against them, that they will then strike out in places where we generally would not be okay with it. Like, that doesn't make it okay, but it keeps happening. Yeah,
it's a hitting the only target you can and hitting a weak point where you can and doing what you can to be able to survive, right? So it's like hitting below the belt, right? It's like, well,
I think it's not the only target. It's just the softest target, which makes it attractive. Once you're over the fact that you you've dehumanized the population doing this to you to the extent that you don't care that what you're doing is harming innocents. Right. And it's easy to dehumanize the group targeting you when they have been dehumanizing you. That doesn't make it okay, but it makes it understandable and predictable.
Yeah, it makes it the fact that you have to accept that this is the mindset that you're in these types of situations. That's why being a third party trying to come in and end, quote unquote, the fight between Palestine and Israel is not like an easy position to be in. Like, it's not really, you can't really do that. It's not.
What you could do is stop sending bombs to the side doing the genocide. You could do that.
Stop enabling them. Yeah, not enabling is usually a pretty. So there's two things.
That should be your first step.
Yeah, there are two main factors that I think can be done as like third parties, quote unquote, is not enabling them. So if you are buying things from Israel, if you're selling things from Israel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you can do stuff about that. And the secondary thing is humanitarian aid. And so if you can do humanitarian aid, that would be the way to go. Because those are the two main things. Because you're not going to change Israel nor Palestine's minds overnight. Right? Thanks, Jared Kushner, you joke. Like, what are you talking about? So same with, like, the Kardashians and the Maquis, right? You're not gonna change... The Maquis you're not gonna convince them to get genocided. Like, so why would you even try?
Yeah. I think there was at least one question that came in as a super chat, wasn't there?
Yeah, you kind of already answered it, but I'll read it again.
Oh, did I?
Oops. Yeah.
No, there was one I thought that came in as the first super chat that I hadn't answered.
Let me double check.
Maybe I'm misremembering.
We got... No, it was My Unfinished Journey. As a non-linguist, would Dapper agree with the maxim that history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme?
Generally, yeah. You're never going to get exact replications of history, right? Because your circumstances are different. Different people are involved, making different decisions. However, there are trends that you can see, right? Like, you can say that, hey, when authoritarian regimes start to oppress people, it increases the likelihood of insurgencies and rebellions and things like that. Like, that happens more frequently as you tighten your grip there, which makes it unsustainable. That's a thing that keeps happening over and over again. Does that mean it's always going to happen in the same way, in the same time frame, with the same types of people in terms of like socioeconomic status or jobs or whatever? No, it doesn't mean that. Similarly, you can see things like, if you get into a war and you don't actually have obvious, victory conditions, it's going to be really hard to claim that you won that war in any meaningful way. Something that, I don't know, certain prominent military powers in the 20th and 21st century could stand to learn from.
Borg, what do you think of that question?
I think, again, technology's going to be different, circumstances are going to be different, but generally, yes, history will repeat, but different enough that it's not going to be exactly the same.
I think that I think you can find situations are repeating, but the exact situations, the exact context won't be the same necessarily. It'll have overall similarities or even overall identical situations, depending on how broad you want to go. But the more narrow you go, the more specific you get, the less it will one-to-one. But what I will say, if you want to know why it's like this, it's because all the people involved are still people. Like, we're all still humans. So humans are still reacting to stimulus the way you would expect humans to react to stimulus. So we get a little bit up our own asses, I think, sometimes, because we're humans. So we think about things in ways that are narrow, as opposed to, like, long-term, broad situational things. So, for example, the graffiti in Pompeii is not really any different from the graffiti on a bathroom stall at your local dive bar. It's like it's still just people drawing dicks, guys. It's still just fart jokes. Like, come on. Don't worry about it.
As someone who's been to Pompeii, I can say yes.
See?
I say, though, that one thing that maybe we should adopt from the city of Pompeii is that you can find your way to the local brothel by following the direction that the dicks point in the sidewalk.
I love that. That's a brilliant marketing strategy. 10 out of 10. Whoever came up with that was probably a time traveler going backwards in time and being like, "All right, listen, you motherfuckers." I don't think so. I see a lot of people look down on like humans in the past because we assume they knew less things. And it's like, yeah, they had less accumulated knowledge over time and less easily accessible information that didn't make them stupid. They had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like some of the arguments that I see about, like, oh, people believe the Bible and they're just a bunch of sheep herders in the middle. And I'm like, that's kind of derivative and derogatory, but I get your point, but I don't think it's a great one. That's just me, though. What do you guys think?
I think I apparently did too good of a job, and now no one has questions because I already answered all of them.
Yeah, I think you did. I think you just obliterated this entire discussion. Good job, Dapper.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're not. Lie to me.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not. I was about to say, well, no, I'm not.
It's like, I was going to be sorry for I should have done worse instead of doing my best. Wait a minute, yeah. I'm Brennan Lee Mulligan. Always do your best.
Mike PhD 42 says, I had a question, but it feels off topic and unfair. Who cares? Ask anyway.
Welcome to Debate Hub, man.
Right?
Give it to us. Let's go.
See, here's the thing. I always go into debates. Maybe not always, but I almost always go into debate with an unfair advantage in that I only debate when I'm very confident that I'm right and I have all the facts on my side.
You say that, but both Chris and Craig, when they debated about whether or not flat earthers were a cult, were both incredibly confident in their positions. They both seemed to they both did really well, and they both did come to a middle. It was such a good debate that they had a discussion after the fact, and if you missed it, you should go check it out.
But also, I actually do think that if you hold the Maquis or the bad guys, like, that's a position you can take, especially since they are portrayed that way in Star Trek. And to come to another conclusion, what you have to do is you have to take your perspective out of the perspective we're presented in the show, which is almost exclusively the perspective of the Federation. Sorry, the Federation. At least until Voyager. Oh, here's the question.
You want to read it?
Yeah, to the question of Israel/Palestine, if we state a belief that the Palestinians believe they're under genocide attempt now, what were the Arabs trying to do in the 1920s, 1948, and 1967? I mean, they were trying to end the apartheid between Palestinians and Israelis. Now, they were trying to do so by largely annihilating the state of Israel, which we can argue is on its own not a just cause. But fundamentally, they were trying to do that because we got to remember they were not doing that with, say, like the British Mandate and things like that, right? So it was a response to the apartheid situation between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And I'm also not here to say that everything that various Arab states do is good, or that the Arab states are by and large the good guys. For one thing, I do think it is not okay that they have not largely been accepting Palestinian refugees, or that when they do, they then oppress them in their own countries by like doing things like shoving them into refugee camps that are basically not much better than, you know, the situations they were living. Actually, in some cases, worse than the situations they were living in Israel, or in some cases, even killing them, which has happened to various Palestinian refugees fleeing to various surrounding Arab states. So my claim is not that the Arab states surrounding Israel are just the good guys.
I think at the end of the day, we have to come to a conclusion that there are no good guys and bad guys, and that it's complicated and it's never black and white. But yeah, Mike also followed up with, I state this to point out 90% of the reason Israel/Palestine is such a tough issue is that Israelis believe they have been under a genocidal threat constantly. I mean, I haven't polled them recently, and I'm willing to take that as at face value. But there's also like a large portion of people that believe climate change isn't real, right? Yeah. So like believing something is a thing, whether that thing is happening is another thing. If the so like what Borg brought up earlier with the Crusades, right? And saying like, well, just because God said so. These types of things are justifications and not usually the crux of a reason something is happening. So the Crusades might be a little bit of an exception, but there are things like most wars are not usually fought because God said so. They're not usually fought based on a belief. They're fought based off of a need, and now whether or not that need is really like so like defense, whether resources such as space, economics, just somebody being a greedy piece of shit, like those are like the reasons why something is happening versus like what is sold to the public. And so how do you counteract a fear-mongering campaign that has been like drilled into a population over the course of generations? And that's a difficult
there is also a complication in that Israel has been making basically PR pushes in non-Israeli Jewish communities, claiming that Israel is the only safe place for Jews. If they felt like they were constantly having genocide enacted against them in Israel, I don't see why they would make that push. They're lying on one side of that. Either Israel is the only safe place to be a Jew, or they're currently under threat of genocide. Because I will tell you this, the Jewish population of, say, New York City is not under threat of genocide. And it is the city in the world with the largest Jewish population. The largest Jewish city on the earth is New York City. And in fact, the United States, last I checked, has a larger population of Jews than Israel does. They are not currently under threat of genocide. Now, that does not mean that they are not under threat of stochastic terrorism, which they are. But it is not a systematic attempt to erase their existence in the United States. So I'm not saying it's safe to be a Jew in the United States, but it's clearly not them being under the threat of genocide. And I'll be honest, given the current situation, if you had to say, Dapper, we are going to wave a wand and you are going to become a Jewish person who gets to either live in Tel Aviv or New York City, I'm not picking Tel Aviv.
Valid.
I will enjoy my bagel and lox in a nice shop in New York, and I will be happy about it.
Yeah. Borg, do you have anything to add?
I don't know enough about the topic to actually have an opinion on the whole Palestine-Israel thingy, so I'll admit I don't know enough for that.
Yeah, no, fair. Yeah, we did go. We went a little offside, as per usual. On Debate Hub.
the thing is that the themes are similar, right? There's a reason that I brought up the connection. It's because it's a similar theme. And while things have accelerated in the last few years, it was still an ongoing conflict when the Maquis thing was being written by the writers, right? I'm very confident that some of them had in mind the concept that this is similar to the situation there. Not identical, obviously, which I appreciate, because if it's too on the nose, then it just gets eye rolling, right? It's the reason why I don't want to watch season 2 of Picard, because I don't want to actually watch Picard and 7 of 9 and whatever that other woman's name is run away from actual ICE agents. No, thank you. That's a little bit too on the nose. Don't need that in my life.
Too soon.
Yeah, maybe in 50 years that'll be an interesting thing that
in 25 years
might be a
make
good
it a
idea.
movie of going back in time.
Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah, no, valid. We should probably have a discussion at some point, and I know I brought this up in the Discord for making debate hubs happen, but talking about how literacy is dead, like media literacy is dead. So that's why,
it's primarily dead on one particular side of the political spectrum, Chesh. Let's be fair.
Well, okay, just because it disproportionately affects a specific demographic doesn't mean that it's not an issue.
It certainly is an issue. I will grant you that. I can't tell you how many people I see 7 are like, man, I didn't know Rage Against the Machine was woke. What machine did you think they were raging against?
God, no. There's a bunch of stuff like that, but like, for example, if we're talking like talking about Star Trek, something doesn't need to be one-to-one. Something doesn't have to be exact to be an allegory for a political position and things that may or may not be going on, right? So like what Dapper said earlier, if you take a straight watch of just the show and take everything that we're getting from the Federation's point of view at face value, yeah, the Maquis are gonna look like garbage. But if you actually take a step back and look at the whole spectrum of what's actually going on with the Maquis and sort of adjust your perspective a little bit and think about it a little bit more, you're gonna find that maybe what Donald Trump is telling you about Palestine is bullshit.
Mike PhD says, actually, from the interview I've seen, the DS9 writers were actually comparing the Maquis more to the IRA in Northern Ireland, which was ongoing, which, is another point where there are some connections there, right? And while... So one of the problems is that the only resistance option that we see available is the Maquis, which is not the case in Northern Ireland, right? There have been options that were not that. And part of the reason is that, the Republicans in Northern Ireland are not currently facing the actual threat of genocide, right? The UK government is okay for Republicans to exist in Northern Ireland, right? Like, you're allowed to be there. You're not going to be rounded up just for favoring joining the Republic and leaving the United Kingdom. So that's one of the reasons why I think the argument is stronger, that there's an actual better connection, regardless of authorial intent, with the Palestinians, because the Palestinians are under existential threat in a way that Republicans are not in Northern Ireland. And by the way, Republican in Northern Ireland has very little connection to anything to do with the word Republican in the context of United States politics. The Republicans in Northern Ireland are people who would like to see Northern Ireland join with the Republic of Ireland, hence the term Republicans. Whereas the Loyalists would prefer that it stay part of the United Kingdom, and stay loyal to the crown, hence the Loyalists.
There is such a thing as studying authors and writers and their perspectives and what they were bringing to the table, and it is equally as valid to take the position of death of the author. And quite frankly, I think people, when they're reviewing media or they want to think on whatever media they've consumed more, should do both.
It seems reasonable.
Well, I think that's just the way art is intended to be, should be consumed, I should say. Not intended. The way art should be consumed. It's valuable to know about Van Gogh and his life and his depression and his struggles, and you can see that develop through his artwork, and you can kind of grasp and understand the artwork from that perspective, and it's just as good to ignore everything about Van Gogh and interpret the artwork however you see fit. These are both valid and very good things. I think people should just do both.
Well, I think both is the right option. I think it's important to know about authorial intent, because that is what the author is attempting to communicate to you. And I think that an important part of engaging in communication is understanding what the intent that the person communicating with you has. But on the other hand, if you see connections and themes and things in a story that were not intended by the author, that's okay. And that doesn't make those themes not there. And in fact, actually, one thing that I think a lot of people that are more or less like millennials are dealing with is the fact that as millennials, a lot of them, especially people who are part of the LGBTQ community, especially trans people, found comfort in the Harry Potter series. And it turns out that the authorial intent of the Harry Potter series was absolutely not to comfort you as a trans person. That doesn't mean that that didn't happen and it wasn't valid and that it's not okay to have felt validated. And indeed, even if you want to reread your copies of that series, to continue to feel validated by the presence of those themes, which you found there.
Yes.
And so, like, that's one of the things where, like, what do we do with that? And the answer is, it is important to recognize both the authorial intent as well as what you found. And it's true that what you found in, say, that series, or say in Star Trek or whatever, was valuable, even if it was contra to the authorial intent. But it is also important to, when you're thinking about things like where to spend your time, your money, your resources, who to support, to think about the authorial intent. So, like, if the authorial intent of, say, Star Trek became, like, I don't know, like pro-United States empire or pro-genocide or something, it would be a good time to perhaps consider not supporting Paramount in their efforts to do this.
Yeah, there's a difference between your interpretation and how you enjoyed something is valid. Where you spend your money is equally as valid. So, if you already bought the books and you want to enjoy them, go for it. If you're a part of a Harry Potter club of people that are just supporting each other and at a book club, nobody should really be giving you a hard time about that. And if anybody is, they should probably go suck an egg. But if you're going around trying to promote current J.K. Rowling's nonsense and giving her a bunch of money, maybe reconsider your options. Maybe don't.
Also,
maybe don't.
The Star Wars separatists have come up, and I am going to go out on a limb and say I do not think the separatists were the bad guys. I'm not saying that they were the. Well, that would be a Star Wars debate, but I'm not saying they were the good guys. I don't think there was a good guy versus bad guy side, but the separatists, let's be pretty clear. They started out saying we want to withdraw from the Galactic Republic and form a separate state that has our interests in mind because we do not feel like our interests are being served by the Galactic Republic. And I think that is a perfectly valid thing to do. And so I think that they were not the bad guys. Now, they were manipulated into this by a Sith Lord, but that doesn't mean that the people who were manipulated were in the wrong for wanting to have more representative government that was more in tune with their concerns and their needs. That's a pretty normal thing to want. And if you don't think you can get it from the government you have and you want to secede from the government and form your own smaller state that will do that, I am presumptively, my presumption is that you are okay to do that and it is an okay thing for you to do. Now, you could overcome that. Like, for instance, if you wanted to secede because you wanted to indefinitely hold other human beings in slavery, I don't think that's a good reason to secede. And you have managed to overcome my presumption in favor of secession. Good job.
Yeah.
But overall, I am in favor of secession when people have reasons that aren't just perpetuating their own oppression of others.
Yeah, and at the same time, I would also point out if you're gonna try to secede from a country and you're going to, like, you want to be taken seriously, you need to, like, have actually thought through some of the fucking logistics. Because if you haven't thought through any of the logistics, like the Alberta separatists, for example, nobody's gonna take you seriously, and nobody cares. You have no leg to stand on.
I think the CIS. From Star Wars does seem like they had it pretty well figured out. They seem to have an internally sustainable economy. They set up a military to defend their territory. And like they seem to know what they were doing. They also had a lot of, they had like a lot of the reasons that they were concerned was that their economic systems were being disrupted and wouldn't be so disruptive if they didn't have to deal with the Galactic Republic. So like, they seem to have done their homework on that. Now, part of that might just be George Lucas hand waving away all those things and just showing us the CIS as a reasonably functioning economy and society. So there. And then we can also say, well, like, what about the times that they invaded, Galactic Republic, like attacking Coruscant and whatnot? And I would say that, well, when your secession is being opposed and being turned into what is kind of a civil war in some ways, although I disagree that preventing a secession is in fact always what we would normally think of in Civil War. Whatever, that's a different topic. It does become reasonable for you to think that if you attack military and government targets on the government that you're trying to of the government you're trying to secede from, that those are valid targets to help you secede, because there does not seem to have been an implication, just like with the Maquis, that the CIS were planning to conquer the territory of the Galactic Republic in those areas where those planets did not want to secede.
God, politics is so interesting, and politics and media.
I would say there was no civil war since it was all orchestrated by the same dude on both sides. So.
Well,
you know
so
what?
I am coming at this from the perspective of like an average politician in the CIS, right? Like, what am I trying to do as that guy? Which is not the same thing as what, Palpatine was trying to do.
Yeah.
Right. It's give them a nudge in the right direction to make things happen, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and
well, that's
someone
a good point.
mentioning the anti-Semitism in the goblins in Harry Potter. Yeah, that is it's definitely a thing that comes up a lot. And I do not think that Rowling was consciously trying to portray her goblins in ways that are connected to Jews. But one of the problems is that goblin lore in Europe itself draws on European anti-Semitic tropes.
Yeah.
And so it is you have to be careful with goblins in order to avoid the anti-Semitic tropes, because a lot of the way they're portrayed just comes from that. And I think that by sticking them with banking when they were already largely based, not largely, but in part based on anti-Semitic tropes, was a really bad call. And I think that we'll say Joanne maybe should have had a better editorial staff.
Well, I would also point out that I think this is an example of J.K. Rowling not intentionally being a piece of shit, but coming by it naturally and not being considerate or conscious enough to care.
Yeah. Or having anyone around her who would fix it.
Yeah, it's negligent.
Because I do think a lot of the stuff that's like negligent but like really, really iffy in the series could have been fixed by someone just being like, Joanne, you can't make the large-nosed, ugly, short, greedy, gold-hungry goblins your main bankers in your European fantasy setting. You can't do that.
It also,
you got to do something else.
But that involves having somebody who might be, politically correct and woke and aware and have different perspectives, and we can't have that. This is why it, folds in on itself, right? It just recycled garbage, as opposed to getting anything, worthwhile. They could have done 100 different things, and they just didn't, because they couldn't be bothered.
Also,
Megan Fox's
choosing a filming...
boobs.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Megan Fox's giant boob says JK is the average wine mom in the UK, blissfully unaware of shit more than 200 miles from her home.
It does kind of seem that way, especially when you get into the extended lore of the other wizarding schools. I'm sorry. Great Britain has a wizarding school, and then all of Africa also has a wizarding school.
It's so poorly thought out.
What are we doing here? Do you know how many people live in Africa? Do you know how many languages are in Africa? What language does the African Wizarding School teach in? Just tell me that, Joanne.
They speak Common.
Common might be the most useful and least realistic bit of world building in all of Dungeons and Dragons.
It's so pragmatic.
Yeah.
All right, we should look to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back again soon. I do know we have a couple of panel discussions coming up. One is going to be about nuclear energy and the future of that and its usage in various countries. So that's going to have a little bit of political. It's going to have a little bit of technical. It's going to have a couple of nukes nerding the fuck out, as we tend to do. And we have another discussion coming up about AI. And we have a journalist philosopher coming on for it. We have a mathematician coming on for it. And we have a somebody who studies psychology coming on for that one. So it's going to be a real mixed bag. And we're talking about, not machine learning. We're talking about the singularity. We're talking about actual, proper artificial intelligence coming into a sentient position. It's going to be great. These are going to be discussions, not debates, although I'm sure it will get heated at some parts. As it is. That's what the That's what the dumpster fires are for. Borg, thank you so much for joining us. Bold of you to challenge Dapper for your first debate. It ended up being a really good discussion, though, so thank you so much for joining. I hope you come back again. I hope Dapper didn't ruin your experience, Dapper.
I'm sorry, next time I'll do worse.
No, you won't. Thank you so
That's
much,
true, I
Dapper,
won't.
for
That was a
joining
lie.
us as well. This ended up being a really good discussion. Thank you so much. We're gonna get on out of here. I hope everybody has a good day. You can go find Dapper at Dapper Dinosaur. He's the one with the top hat and brown and not the green one. And Borg, do you have anything you want to show?
No, you can find me in travel places, so.
Yeah, Borg is around, and you can catch him over. You can catch him in side chat. He's all over the place. Thank you so much for joining us. We're gonna get on out of here. I hope everybody has a good day. Bye.
Bye.